This is the Planted Runner. I'm Coach Claire Bartholic, and this is the PR Training Lab. What I do here is create a custom training schedule recorded here live, very little editing. I just go through my process of how I create a custom training plan for a runner like you. Last week, we looked at Jennifer. She was training for a half marathon in 2:15. She's got an amazing story, so check that one out. Jennifer actually ended up joining my PR team, which is so much fun because not only do I get to help her through the process, but we get to see the results, see how Jennifer does in 3 months when her race is over. And speaking of results, I had a request on Instagram that I should do follow ups with the athletes. I think that's an amazing idea. So, if the people who have been featured on the show are interested and willing to come back, I would love to check in on them and see how they did with the training, see how the race went. That would be a fun thing for me to do. So, let me know in the comments or shoot me an email if you'd like to see that. My inbox is always open, Claire at theplantedrunner.com. Speaking of training plans, if you want to be a featured guest on one of the future Planted Runner podcast episodes, you can enter to win at theplantedrunner.com/PR lab. I'll say that all over it again and at the end, and I will put it in the show notes. All right, let's get into today's athlete. This is Melanie. She's 35 years old. She heard of me right here on the Planted Runner podcast. She's training for a marathon this November, and it's the Every Woman's Marathon, which I think is so exciting. She says it's her first marathon, and her goal is to finish. Well, that is great. I love making training plans for first time marathoners. So let's get into it and find out how experienced Melanie is, because that is going to make a big difference in how I create her training plan. If she is a brand new runner, her training plan is going to look a lot different than somebody who started at the 5K, then went to the 10K, then went to the half, and now is finally graduating to the marathon. And while I will tell you that's probably the proper way to do it, almost nobody does it that way unless you started very young and you're moving up to the marathon from running all your life. But as adult runners, we sometimes just jump right up to the marathon. I know I did. Well, it's not 100% true. I started with the half, no 5Ks, no 10Ks, the half, and then, hey, let's try a marathon. But a lot of people these days go right to the marathon, and it looks like that is the case for Melanie. So, Melanie actually sent me an email, which I think is going to, once I told her she was going to be chosen, I think this email is really important to talk about because she gave us a lot of extra information because she's only been running for 4 months. Now, I would not recommend in most cases that if you just started running 4 months ago, that you go ahead and run a marathon. Well, in the first year, really. I would say let's work up to it. Let's see how you do. But hey, you know what? It's her life, it's her goal, it's her dream. I think we can get there. But let's find out a little bit more about Melanie. She says, I am currently 202 pounds and I'm 5'1". I recently listened to your podcast episode about chasing race weight, and while I found a lot of it to be valuable, I don't know how much of it applies to me as I am very heavy for my height. I know you're not a weight loss coach, but I'm having some concerns about running a marathon while weighing this much. So I'm actively working on weight loss as well as still eating healthy amounts, getting sleep, and letting my body recover. I'm okay if you say my weight on the podcast. Maybe it helps someone else in the same boat. Okay. So this is definitely going to be an interesting one. Oh, she also says this. I want to clarify that I am a walk runner. Okay. I've been running more than walking my long runs in the past few weeks, but I do not anticipate running the entire marathon without taking frequent walk breaks. The marathon is 7 hours and 45 minutes long. So my goal is to finish before they close the race. Okay, so that is actually something that we can work on. So if you did listen to my race weight episode, or if you haven't yet, I would say go ahead and listen to that one either after this one or when you can, because training for a marathon and losing weight are generally kind of opposing goals. Even if you are overweight for your height, it's not the best way to lose weight, honestly. You don't need to be running for hours and hours and hours to lose weight. You need to be in a calorie deficit. Whereas in the marathon, you don't always want to be in a calorie deficit for most people. In fact, you usually want to be in a slight surplus because we are trying to grow our muscles. We are trying to stimulate positive adaptations that make us fitter and stronger. And we can't do that if our body thinks that we're starving. Even if we have a lot of fuel already on board in the form of fat, your body doesn't want to use that. It stored it for a reason. And so it doesn't want to break into its precious fat stores to build muscle. It will, but it doesn't like doing that. Okay. And so, honestly, if I'm looking at this and I say, Melanie, hey, like, what is your goal? Is it weight loss or is this marathon? I would say choose one, but not both. But I think if she is planning on running this walking it, I should say, in 7 hours and 45 minutes, that would be like somebody, going on an epic hiking trip, or somebody, doing something really aerobic all day long. We are not going to just say, oh, no, you should not do that. No, she can have an adventure. She can do this. And the fact that she knows herself enough that she is planning on walking it is great. Now, let me back up a little bit on run walk. So, some very, very fast marathoners can use run walk. It is not just for people who don't have the endurance to run the whole thing. Some people use it as a strategy. Now, this was popularized by an Olympic marathoner named Jeff Galloway. It's called the Galloway Method. And he has this whole program where he encourages everyone to take walk breaks while they're running on purpose, because it makes it easier, more attainable. And he walked one of his very, very fast marathons, so it can be used for faster runners. I have pros and cons with that, especially when it comes I think there are pros and cons with that when it comes to faster runners. But what I love about the walk run method is that it makes these really great distances achievable for people. You can take your time, and it is more about the experience than trying to get there as fast as possible. And the other thing is, it really welcomes people into what's a challenging sport. And if you give yourself the opportunity to take walk breaks, you can do more running than you would if you're just starting out trying to run with no walk breaks. So, using the run walk method is great to be able to increase your fitness safely and effectively. And it's a great way to come back after injury, or if you've had a long break for some reason. So, normally, I would say I would not really encourage both of these goals at the same time. And I would say wait for your first marathon. I think that, why are we doing the marathon right away when we've only been running for 4 months? Why don't we, long distance endurance takes time. Let's build up to that. Let's give ourselves a year to do that. Maybe work on body composition and work on endurance for a year before jumping to the marathon. That is what I would say is my natural inclination to advise. But again, this is not my goal. This is not my dream. This is Melanie's. And the Every Woman's Marathon is probably a pretty exciting goal. It's motivating her to move. So who am I to judge? If this is something that is going to get her in the best shape of her life and is going to motivate her to be an amazing runner, I'm sure she's already an amazing runner, then I think go for it. Let's figure out a way to do it safely, and let's figure out a way to get her the endurance that she needs. All right. Melanie is American, I'm assuming, because she uses miles. She has no reoccurring injuries. She says she hasn't raced in a long time. I asked her what are her race times and distances because I'm trying to see what kind of paces I should give her for her running plan. And for run walk, what I do there is I kind of average the distance. So let's say I want her to run walk a mile, and the ratio of running to walking is going to be, different depending on lots of factors, right? Where she is in her training. But if I say run a 15-minute mile, that's going to include those walk breaks. Okay. So she says she could run 1 mile in 17 minutes. So I'm assuming that means that she's only talking about running, but that could possibly be including her walk breaks as well. So when we're talking about a 17-minute mile, that for a lot of people is more walking than running. But what I define as running is when you're hopping from one foot to another. There's only one foot touching the ground at a time. With walking, there's always 2 feet, except for the one time okay. So you pick up your foot and put it down. There's always 1 or 2 feet on the ground when you walk. When you run, you're hopping. So you do have a moment of flight in between. So that moment of flight is really what separates running from walking. You'll see a lot of people kind of shuffling down the road and they're double supported. So that means 2 feet are touching the ground at a time. It's more challenging than walking for sure, but it's not quite running. And so I don't know what Melanie is doing here. And honestly, I don't care. She's moving down the road. I'm happy for her. This is not the time to criticize what she is doing. We're just trying to get her to the finish line. So she is running 17-minute mile if she's doing an entire mile all at once. How many miles per week do you typically run? She's up to 18 miles a week. So we are in August now. So we have August, September, October, and middle of November. So she's got 3.5 months to get to the marathon. So I would love to see that number go up. But remember, she is run walk. So her mileage isn't really what we're looking at. We want to know time on her feet here. So I'm not going to do the math right now. 17-minute miles times 18 miles per week, how many hours she is training. But we want to get her up to a good amount of training per day and then a long run. What is the highest amount of weekly mileage you've ever run, and how long ago was that? She says she has run 19.57 miles. I love the accuracy here. 3 weeks ago. And I forgot to translate everything into kilometers for you. So 19.57 is 31.49 in kilometers, and 18 miles per week is about 29 kilometers. So wow, she's getting almost a 20-mile run in 3 weeks ago from just starting out 4 months ago. So that's pretty high. That is something that I wasn't prepared for. So she's spending a long time out there. Now, if you've listened to me for a while, or if you've subscribed to my newsletter, you know that I have recently put out a post, and I talk about it all the time on Instagram too, about how the long run should not be more than 3 hours. Now, obviously, if she's running 17-minute miles, even with the break, she's out there for way longer than 3 hours. So I would like to cut that. Okay. And I don't want her running 19 miles anymore. I want her to run for 3 hours. Now, there is some argument to be made. If you are taking walk breaks, you can push that 3-hour time limit, so to speak, a little bit longer. I know Jeff Galloway and his walk run program, what he does is He has people running 25 miles in training because it's walk run. His philosophy is that it's more gentle than running the whole thing, and so you don't need as much recovery time, and it'll get you more prepared for the marathon. I have to disagree with that because I've coached many, many runners who have come to me from being way into the Galloway program, and they are spending 5, 6 hours on a Saturday running. Yes, it's run walking, but they are spending all of this time on their feet, which obviously affects the rest of their lives. They really have to dedicate themselves to spend almost an entire day, daylight hours out there training. That is, I can't imagine training for 6 hours. I've never trained for 6 hours. These are some serious athletes if they're out there nonstop. Yes, they're walking, but still they're out there for 5 or 6 hours. I think it's too much. The science says it's too much. But again, there is not a lot of science on run walk, right? We don't know exactly, is it 3 hours? Is it 4 hours? It's somewhere in that range. Everybody's on a bell curve, of course, but what I've found with my athletes that get really into the Galloway method is that they're exhausted. Okay. They do these super long runs on the weekends. And surprise, surprise, they don't feel good on Tuesday when it's time to work on their speed work. Okay. Yes, even run walkers will do speed work. Absolutely. And I just think that particular philosophy for training, once you get past a certain level, it's just too much. Again, I love the method for getting new people into the sport. I love the method for coming back from injury or from a break. But these super, super, super long runs, I think are detrimental. And I think there's a better way. Okay. So, what I would do for Melanie is I would stop her long runs at 3 hours, maybe give her 3.5. And yes, she's only going to get, I don't know, 12, 13 miles maybe in that amount of time. But there are a few ways that we can simulate more time on her feet without causing all of this drastic tiredness, fatigue, recovery time, all of that we don't want. So the first way is to do a steady before the long run. That is the day before your long run, you take a shorter run. So we're going to talk in hours now for Melanie instead of miles, because with the walk breaks, it's going to look different. So let's say on Friday, you go out for an hour run walk. And then on Saturday, you do your long run and you do 3 hours. But that hour on Friday, the day before, is a higher intensity. It is not sprinting. It is not super, super hard, but it is a higher intensity than you would be doing for your long run. I would say it's a medium effort. It's a challenge. Okay. And maybe in a run walk program, what you would do if you can't increase your speed, what you do is increase your running ratio. Okay. So instead of running for 5 minutes and walking for 2 minutes, or whatever your ratio is, maybe on that hour-long Friday run, you're running for 7 minutes and then walking for 2 minutes. Or maybe it's you're running for 8 minutes, you're walking for 1 minute. Whatever your ratio is, it would be a more challenging effort than what you would do the next day in your long run. So that really is the key. There's lots of ways to dial up intensity when it comes to running, and it's not always with speed. It could be with a more challenging course. You could be going on hills, right? And for a walk runner, it could be changing the ratio so that you're running more than walking. So that would be my strategy number one for Melanie. Now, step two, I would say, or option two, I think is a little more advanced. And we know Melanie's only been running for 4 months, so we can't say that she's advanced just yet. But This might be something that's actually a lot more doable than her being out there for 5 hours at a time. So she's got a flexible schedule. She works from home. So she's able to spend some more time training, which is amazing. So instead of going out there for some 5 or 6 hour long run, let's say she does 3 hours in the morning. She comes home, she gets dressed, she refuels, she rests, and then somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 to 6 hours later, she goes for an hour long run. So that's 4 hours of training in one day, but she has that break in between to rest, recover, and recuperate a little bit. So the magic in that is that your bones, tendons, and ligaments, science has found that they've stopped adapting to the stimulus in about 45 minutes. So if you go out for a run that's longer than 45 minutes, your bones are just like, okay, we're out there. I've done all I can do. I'm just going to stop adapting at this point. I'm going to stop creating more positive changes. Now, this has been compared to, let's say you walk into a bakery and you smell croissants and it's just the most heavenly smell that you've ever smelled. And you're like, this is amazing. Well, the workers who've been standing there all day, they don't smell it at all, right? Because their nose has gotten used to it. It has stopped perceiving the stimulus. Same thing with running and your bones, tendons, and ligaments. At a certain point, they stop perceiving the stimulus. So they're done adapting. Now, your lungs, your muscles, those keep adapting for a while longer. Some people say it's an hour and a half. Some people say it's 2 hours. But there is a point where they stopped adapting as well. And it's certainly not past 3 hours. So that's really why we stop after 3 hours. This has nothing to do with your pace, your speed. It is all about time and effort. That's what your body knows. And about 3 hours after you start your run, even if it's run walk, your body's done. It's not going to get any better on that day. But if you take a break, and science is showing us that it takes about 4 hours, then you will get that stimulus again. So it's like if you worked in the bakery, for 4 hours, you stopped smelling the croissants, but then you went home, had some lunch, relaxed, and then you came back to the bakery for your second shift, you would smell those croissants again when you walked in. It's very, very similar to that. So those are the things that I would recommend for Melanie, is that she stop doing these crazy long runs. I shouldn't use the word crazy, forgive me. Stop doing these misguided long runs and start chopping this up. If she really is going to be spending, I can't even imagine, I need to do the math here on how many hours she is training. If she spreads out that training a little more equally throughout the week, I think she's going to have a lot more success. All right, what days of the week does she currently run? Every day except for Thursday and Sunday. 5 days a week is a lot for a beginner runner, but again, if she's run walking, if she's doing well with this, that is okay. Which day of the week do you prefer to do your long run? She likes it on Saturday. Okay, perfect. So my example of the Friday, Saturday steady long run would work well. All right, how long is your average long run? She said her average long run is 6 miles. Her most recent was 10 miles again. So I think we're going to have to shift Melanie into time and not worry about the mileage so much, but we'll see how that goes. So she's out there for a decent amount for her long run, that's for sure. What pace would you say is a very easy effort? This pace is so slow that you could talk the entire time as easily as walking. She says 15-minute mile. Okay, so that's a little different than she said up above where she said 17-minute mile, but what I'm suspecting is the 17-minute mile is 100% running, whereas a 15-minute mile combines a run walk. So if that is the case, that really illustrates the point of how much faster Melanie can get from point A to point B with the walk breaks, versus if she walks the whole time, her pace will slow a lot more. So, run walk is great for her. What days of the week does she prefer her speed days? Monday and Wednesday. That is perfect for a Saturday long run. Takes the day off on Sunday. So let's see. What are your favorite kinds of running workouts? She says she doesn't have any. Well, that makes sense because she's still at the beginning of her journey and she's doing run walk. So she might not be experimenting with speed just yet. What are your least favorite kinds of running workouts, or what do you struggle with? And she says she struggles most with endurance during a single run. Well, that makes sense. She's working on it, so she'll get there. Endurance running is all about long time on your feet, right? It takes a long time to build endurance. But the good thing is you can build endurance for a long time. You can, years and years and years you have to improve. So I think, Melanie, you've got a lot of time to improve in the future. And it will get easier. Although, you know, what people say about running is that it never gets easier. You just get faster, right? What kinds of non running physical activities do you do each week, and when do you do them? So she does strength training Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays, Pilates Thursday, and yoga every day. Okay. So she is doing, let's see, so she is strength training on the same day as her running. So I love that. I think it's great to strength train on the same day as you're running, because it keeps the hard days hard and then it keeps your off days very restful. That is the best way to be able to grow and get fresh for running, is that if you do your strength training on the same day as you're running. Now, that is not actually what I advise for every single runner. In fact, I don't advise anything for every single runner. We're all different, right? But if someone is strength training on one day and running on the next day, and that is the only way they can create a habit, or if that is the only way that they can fit all of this stuff into their busy lives, then that is what they should do. Don't worry about perfection. Getting the job done is way more important, and building the habit so you don't have to rely on motivation or discipline. Pilates on Thursdays and yoga every day. So, yoga can be great for runners, but it can combine strength and stretching and mobility. I would say the downside of yoga is that there's a lot of isometric holds in yoga. So think if you're in warrior pose or triangle pose, whatever it is, you get into the pose and then you just stay there, right? So that's isometric. You're just holding steady. That is good. It's not specific at all to running, right? It has nothing to do with running. There's never a moment in running where you're trying to hold yourself still, right? We are hopping down the road as fast as we can. So, yoga can be a complement, but it is not specific to running in the style that most traditional yoga is. I don't know what style of yoga she's doing, but honestly, if it makes you feel good, do it. I would prefer to see something that was more mobility focused than traditional yoga, and that is when you're actively moving through the motions. So more flow type yoga, I would say, is more running specific. But anyway, that's just me nitpicking. There's nothing wrong with yoga. If you love it and it makes you feel good, go for it. What are your biggest struggles with nutrition? Okay, so Melanie says, I'm worried about meeting my nutritional needs while training and racing as a vegan. I'm also trying to lose weight for my health, and I'm not sure how to balance weight loss and eating for training. Excellent point, Melanie. I mean, it's tough because we want you to eat before you go on a run because it doesn't matter what your body looks like. It matters what's running through your bloodstream. You may have fat storage, we all do, but your body wants to use the most readily available fuel it has. Fat, it's like having a deep freezer in your basement. You realize, oh shoot, I'm out of I don't know, whatever it is, frozen food for dinner. I have to go all the way to the basement, unlock it out of storage. It's inconvenient for the body to burn fat. What the body wants to do when it runs is burn glucose. It wants to burn something quick. It wants to burn whatever is in your bloodstream first. That's what's flowing. That's easy to grab, easy to use. It doesn't want to go into deep storage. It will if it has to, right? So we want to be fueling our runs, and we want to come home from our runs and recover. So this is tough. Again, I'm not a weight loss coach. I'm not going to try to coach Melanie on how to lose weight. If you're trying to lose weight, honestly, Melanie, I would say don't train for a marathon. Running for 3 to 4 hours at a time is not the best use of your time if you're trying to lose weight. Just like your body stops adapting, your bones, tendons, and ligaments stop adapting, running for hours on end, it's not going to produce a whole lot more weight loss than doing shorter, but maybe more intense workouts. There's lots of ways to lose weight, and I'm not going to say how here, but honestly, losing weight is about being in a calorie deficit. And you can do that in a lot of ways. And running burns a lot of calories, but it's not, it's so hard for me to talk about because I really am rooting for Melanie. I want her to run. I really want you to run the marathon. So please don't say that, please don't take this as I'm trying to be discouraging. But honestly, I have to tell you that this is a tricky thing. And you'll also have to look at what you're eating the rest of the day. So we could look at what you're eating and say, okay, we need to eat something before our runs. We need to eat something after our runs, preferably with carbs and protein after, just carbs before. But what are you doing the rest of the day, right? Are you going to be in a calorie surplus the rest of the day? What are you eating to not only fuel your training, but to fuel your life? Okay. So there's a lot into it. And as a vegan, there's some things that you need to look into. I've got a lot of information on my website. I've actually just updated a post about how science-backed training can help a plant-based runner, how science-backed nutrition can help a plant-based runner. So, you might want to take a look at that. I'll try to link that one in the show notes about the things that you should be including in your diet. She might benefit from a higher protein diet. Protein tends to be satiating. It might help her eat less, but without knowing what she's eating now, I really can't give her advice. And in fact, I don't want to give weight loss advice, but it might be a struggle, honestly. So if you are struggling with nutrition and you need an individualized plan that's going to work for you, I highly recommend that you contact a registered dietitian for some help. And there are lots of plant-based registered dietitians out there that can help you craft what you need to fuel your marathon training and to be in a slight calorie deficit to hopefully get the body composition goals that you are looking for. There are ways to do it. It's not my preferred way. Okay. I've got to keep saying that. I would say if I was telling you what to do and I got to make all the decisions, I would say scratch the marathon and focus on body composition, weight loss, all the things that you want to do, build up your endurance, and then run the marathon next year. That's honestly what I would tell you. But again, I'm not your mom. I want to be supportive. And I do think you can run the marathon, especially when you have realistic goals of just completing it before the cutoff. So I want you to be encouraged. I want you to have big, crazy, wild dreams because that keeps us going when you don't want to, when you're discouraged. So anyway, it can be done. It can be done. And again, I'm rooting for you. Okay, so what are your biggest struggles mentally when it comes to success and performance? She says, I'm hard on myself when I feel I have failed. I get nervous when trying new goals like increasing distance. Totally normal, totally natural. I think we all feel that way at times, especially people who are drawn to running tend to be a little type A. We like goals, we like numbers, we like checking boxes. And, who likes failing? Nobody likes failing. But again, you're doing awesome already, Melanie. You've run a 19-mile long run, more than 19 miles. So we don't need to increase distance. You got the distance, right? We're going to do it in a smart way. We're going to break up some of those runs. And really, that is one of the best ways to do anything that you're scared of, do anything that you're intimidated by, is to break it up into baby steps, little goals, achievable chunks. And that's what we're going to do here. Achievable chunks. So it's not this big, scary thing. You don't get up off the couch, never having run before, and go run 42 kilometers or 26.2 miles. At least you shouldn't, right? You take it 1 mile at a time. You gradually increase your training so that you can handle the demands of such an overwhelmingly long race, if I'm being honest, right? So that's how you do it, is by little chunks, build the confidence, build the fitness, and you'll get there one step at a time. What are you hoping to learn or gain in this training cycle? She says, I am hoping to learn to push past my boundaries and continue training consistently for improvement. I love it. I love it. So, boundaries, we definitely want to keep some boundaries here. We don't want you pushing too hard. That's how people get hurt. That's how people burn out. Most of the time, your effort level on a challenging run, that would be a speed run or a long run, should be a 7 or 8 out of 10 on the effort scale. So we're not trying to push ourselves in that way, in an intensity version. All the time. We always want to make it challenging but doable. I would say the hardest thing with endurance running is consistency. And for a lot of people, it's holding back. So I think that you're going to achieve this definitely, and train consistently. That is the number one goal. So you don't have to crush it every single day. You just need to crush the consistency. So if you don't feel like going for a run today and you're not sick or injured, just go for a little run. Give yourself 5 minutes, give yourself 10 minutes. And if you don't feel like running after that, come on back. It's okay. But usually you'll end up continuing the run. So consistency over intensity is always the goal. Anything else you would like to share that would be helpful to your success? She says, this is my first marathon, and I chose it because they allow extra time for walkers. I'm also training with a group of older women in their 40s, 40s and 50s, who are helping me be consistent. So remember, Melanie's 35. So us old ladies are helping her be consistent, right? So I think that's awesome. Okay. So she chose this marathon because she can walk. She's not trying to run the whole marathon. I think that if you do have a realistic expectation, which I think honestly Melanie does, she can achieve this. Her goal is 7:45 because that's when they cut it off. And I think if she keeps on pushing forward for the next 3.5 months, I think that Melanie can achieve her goal. Now, if she does this, and we'd all love to hear how she does at this, I think after that, I would highly recommend we switch to a different focus after the marathon. You've checked that box, and let's work on some shorter distances, working on speed, working on power. That is, if you want to use running for weight loss, that is the kind of thing that is a much smarter investment of your time than hours and hours and hours and hours on your feet. So we could shift after that. If she wants to keep up run walk forever and ever, great. A lot of people do. It works for a lot of people. That's how they prefer to do it. Awesome. But I think that with some time and some training, Melanie could graduate to all running if that were her goal. All right. Well, I'm excited to put this plan together for Melanie. I think I'm going to have to be a little creative with this. I do run walk plans all the time, but I think with Melanie, because she has spent a lot of time on her feet already, that we'll have to do something different. So I'm probably not going to use paces at all for her. Just really is not necessarily important. I think the time on her feet of running versus walking, the ratio is going to be how we turn up the intensity instead of actual speed. So, looking forward to putting this together for Melanie. If you would like to enter to win a free training plan created live on the show, go to theplanedrunner.com/PR lab. And before you do that, do me a favor and write an Apple podcast review. I will be asking you that in the form. And that way I can ensure that you're really a fan of the show. And I want to reward the people that make this show possible. And that is you, just by writing an Apple podcast review. That's it for me for today. Have a great run today.